All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something a little bit different, a unique funding strategy, that could be a game changer for you if you're thinking about, starting your own business. We're talking about rollovers as business startups, or as they're more commonly known,
Um,
ROBS.
yeah, absolutely. Getting that initial capital together to get a business off the ground, that can be one of the biggest hurdles for aspiring entrepreneurs. A lot of folks look to, traditional funding routes first,
Yeah.
loans, things like that. But that often means taking on debt, which is, well, it's a lot for a new business to handle right out of the gate. So ROBS offers a really interesting alternative. It allows you to potentially use your existing retirement savings, things like your 401k or your IRA, to actually fuel those entrepreneurial dreams. And you can do it without those hefty early withdrawal penalties and without adding to your debt load.
So essentially, instead of, going to a bank hat in hand or trying to, get in front of investors, you might actually have a source of funding, already available to you, right? Like
Yeah.
right there in your retirement account. But how does that actually work in practice?
Well, it's a very specific process. It's not just a free-for-all. The first thing you absolutely have to do is establish a new corporation.
Yeah.
And it has to be a C corporation. Okay. That's super important, and we'll circle back to why that is later on. So you've got your new C Corp. Now that corporation sets up its own retirement plan. Most often, this is going to be a 401k. So now
Yeah.
you've got the company and its own 401k. The really key step here is that you roll over funds from your existing retirement accounts, the ones that are eligible, into this brand new corporate 401k. And then finally, that new 401k plan uses that money, those rolled over funds, to buy stock in the C corporation that you just created.
Hmm.
So in essence, your retirement savings are now an investment in your own company.
It's kind of a mind-bending concept when you first hear it, right? Using money that's supposed to be for your future to, fund your present. Why isn't this a more, I don't know, commonly talked about option? Why is it so kind of under the radar?
It is a bit specialized, I'll grant you that. And it definitely has its complexities. It's not a simple move, and there's some potential downsides too, which we'll absolutely unpack as we go. But for the right person, someone who's diligently saved for retirement, has a good amount in there, and a really solid, well thought out business plan, but maybe they're having trouble, you know, getting funding through those more traditional channels for them, ROBS can be a really viable and appealing option. And really, this whole deep dive we're doing today is for you, the listener. You're the one who wants to, dig into this and figure out if this is a path that makes sense for you and your business goals.
That's right. So to really break this down and make sure we're covering all the bases,
Hmm.
we're going to approach this in three parts. First, we're going to, lay the foundation, build that base understanding. What exactly is ROBS? What are the nuts and bolts of how it actually works, and why would anyone, even consider this? What makes it so attractive? And then we'll dig into the specifics, the nitty gritty. What's the actual step-by-step process? What's the legal framework that this all operates within, the rules and regulations? And who are the key players you're going to have to work with if you go down this path? And then finally, we'll step back and take a balanced look. What are the advantages, the potential upsides, and what are the risks, the potential downsides of using ROBS? Ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
All right, part one. Understanding the basics of ROBS. So let's start with the most basic question.
Oh.
What is ROBS? Like, in the simplest terms possible.
Okay. At its core, ROBS is a way for you to, actually use the money you've saved for retirement to fund a new business, or even buy an existing business if that's your goal. And the key is you can do it without those typical penalties, the ones you normally get hit with for early withdrawals, and without having to pay taxes on that money right away. And here's the really important part. It's not a loan. It's not like you're borrowing the money and have to pay it back with interest. It's also not just a simple distribution where you take the money out and the IRS comes knocking for their share. It's something different. It's what we call a redirection of funds.
Redirection. Okay, so the money's not just like, poof, gone from your retirement account, never to be seen again. It's more like being, what, repurposed?
Yeah, you got it. The way it works, the mechanism, is you set up that new corporation, right? That C Corp. Then you establish a new retirement plan within that company. Usually, as we said, it's a 401k. And then you move your existing retirement money into this new plan. And that new plan, in turn, uses the money to buy stock in the corporation that houses it.
So this is something that's typically attractive to, Entrepreneurs who, I don't know, maybe they've been working for a while and have built up a decent nest egg in their retirement account, but they don't have, other easy sources of funding.
Exactly. It allows them to essentially invest in their own business,
Hmm.
using their own capital.
Yeah.
It's a way to get things going without starting in debt or having to give up, ownership to outside investors right off the bat.
Okay, let's just recap those key takeaways from this basic explanation of RBS just to make sure it's crystal clear, right? So, number one, RBS lets you use that retirement money for your business without getting hit with those early withdrawal penalties. Number two, it's not a loan. It's not a simple withdrawal. It's a redirection of funds. Number three, the structure involves setting up a new C corporation and creating a new retirement plan under that corporation. And number four, this setup can give you, debt-free financing right from the start, whether you're starting a brand new company or, buying an existing business. Those are the biggies. Did I miss anything?
You got them all.
Yeah.
Now, just to walk through the sequence of events one more time, just to solidify it.
Yeah.
First, you legally form that C corporation. That's step one. Got to have that C corp. Step two is the corporation creates its own 401k plan. So now you've got the two entities in place. Then you take your existing retirement savings, whether it's from a 401k you had with a previous employer or a traditional IRA, you roll that money over directly into this new 401k. Direct rollover, super important. And last but not least, that new 401k uses those very funds to buy stock in the new C corporation.
So it's almost like a, closed loop, a self-contained system. Your retirement money goes into the company's 401k, and then the 401k buys stock, putting that money right back into the business.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. It basically allows you to, sidestep the traditional route of going to lenders or, looking for outside investors. You're in the driver's seat from day one. And like we said, no loans, no debt hanging over your head. But, and this is the big but, this is not a simple do-it-yourself project, okay? This is a complex process with inherent risks. You absolutely have to follow the rules and regulations, the IRS rules, the Department of Labor rules, everything. And not just at the beginning. You need to stay on top of compliance all along the way. If you don't, well, you can end up with some serious problems.
So just to make sure we're all on the same page, let's go over those key points again. No early withdrawal penalties when you use the funds this way. Got to set up a new C corporation and its own 401k. The new 401k specifically uses the money to buy stock in your company. It's not a loan. It's more like a restructuring of your retirement assets. And you absolutely, positively have to stay on top of compliance with the IRS and the Department of Labor.
Got it. Got it. All right, so now let's talk about why this approach might be so appealing to someone who wants to start a business. What are the big draws of ROBS?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, why go through all this, this whole process when you could theoretically just try to get a regular business loan? What's the advantage?
Well, the biggest one for a lot of people is that you can potentially launch your business completely debt-free. Think about that.
Yeah.
You start your company without those monthly loan payments looming over you, without interest charges eating into your early profits. For a new business, especially in those first couple of years when you're just finding your footing, that is huge. That can be a major difference maker.
That's got to be such a relief to not have that debt hanging over your head right away. Are there other factors that make ROBS appealing?
Oh, absolutely. Another big one is there's no credit check. You don't need collateral. So let's say you've been saving diligently, you've got a good amount in your retirement account, but maybe your personal credit isn't the greatest, or maybe you don't own a home or other assets you can use as collateral for a loan. Well, ROBS can really open doors in that situation because none of that is a factor.
That makes a lot of sense. It kind of levels the playing field a bit, right? It gives people who might not qualify for traditional loans a way to fund their dream.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then you've got the speed factor. Sometimes you need money quickly to make things happen. Well, with ROBS, you can potentially get access to that capital much faster than you could if you were going through the whole rigmarole of applying for a bank loan or, trying to convince investors to come on board. Those processes can take forever. And with ROBS, it's your money. You're in control. So you can move a lot faster and make decisions more quickly. You don't have a bank breathing down your neck or investors second-guessing you at every turn.
So just to recap, no debt, no credit checks or collateral needed, potentially much faster access to capital. Is there a fourth, compelling reason why someone might choose this path?
There is. And it's the fact that with ROBS, your personal financial success is very directly tied to the success of your business. You're essentially making a major investment in yourself, in your own vision. And that can be incredibly motivating, knowing that if your company does well, it's not just good for the business, it's good for you personally, it's good for your retirement account. It's all aligned.
Right. So that fourth reason is, you're really invested. It's all riding on the success of this venture. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now we've got a good grasp on what makes ROBS attractive to some people, the basic appeal. Let's move on to part two and really dig into how this process actually works. We've touched on the steps, but let's break it down in more detail.
All right, let's do it.